All right, the next section is on the fun part of the business, which is accounting for the money coming in. This first screen shows the steps in the sales process, and what it does is it highlights the features within QuickBooks plus the accounting that goes on behind the scenes. So this combines a few things that I've talked about up to this point. So we all either have cash customers or credit customers. So on the cash side, those who pay us at the time that we complete our transaction, pay by cash, check, or credit card. The feature within QuickBooks that you would use is called a sales receipt. When you record the sales receipt, what happens is that automatically, behind the scenes, you'll take the money and put it into what's called the undeposited funds account, which is basically a holding account for all your cash, check, credit card transactions, from which you'll make your deposit slip and so on. And then it'll credit or increase your income account. Okay, so that happens behind the scenes.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Is this also the 30-day payment?
No, that's the next one here. So this is for payment at the time of service. So you sold the products, you did some work, they paid you right there. The next step after that is then recording the deposit. So you have all this money in this holding account, which I'll show later. So when you make the deposit, it pulls it out of there according to your deposit slip, and then it increases or debits your bank account. So that's on the cash side. On the credit side, if someone's paying you in 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, or whatever, then you would use the invoice feature in QuickBooks. What that does is that impacts your accounts receivable. So now you've impacted your accounts receivable aging, okay? And it hits your income, okay? So your accounts receivable is debited, your income is credited. To get that paid, that invoice paid, so you get a check in 30 days from your customer, you have to use the receive payment feature. Remember, these were connected by those lines on the home page. So you use the receive payments feature, which will then pull it out of your receivables and show that invoice is paid, and then it'll move that money into your undeposited funds account, that holding account. And then just like with the sales receipt, you make your deposit, pulls the money out of the undeposited funds and puts it into your bank account, according to your deposit slip. Okay? So that's an overview of what goes on within QuickBooks for the sales company. To record a sale, correct. If you want to use what's called items in QuickBooks, we'll be going over that in the next session. So if you want to keep track of, you're all contractors, so, and a lot of you are supposed to be landscapers according to the description, so if you wanted to keep track of fall cleanup, spring cleanup, mows, new construction and all of that, you would use an invoice and a sales receipt to do that. If you didn't care, and if you don't care about that, you don't need to come to the second session, okay? Because if you just were using record deposits, you can just put the money towards sales and keep it as simple as that. So these two forms require to use items like spring cleanup, fall cleanup, whatever things you typically bill for, whatever services and products you provide. Okay, so you can bypass all of that and keep it simple and just use the record deposit. To get things started, you need to have customers. And QuickBooks has a customer center. This is the 2006 and later versions. This thing's great. There's just so much information here, and it's all on one screen. So I'm going to spend a little time on it. So a bunch of windows open. I'm going to close them, go back home. So I can click Customer Center up here, or I can click Customers here. So I click on Customers, and here's my entire customer list. And remember, if you have a customer list in another program or Excel or something, you can import that here into QuickBooks. So you don't have to start all over again if you're using QuickBooks for the first time. So we have this customer here highlighted in black. His name is Jim Chidester, and his information is all here to the right. Okay, so we got his name, customer type, billing address, and so on. Now down here in the lower part are his transactional detail. So this drop down gives me a lot of variation on what I can look at. If I click the top choice here, all transactions, this is everything: invoices, sales receipts, payments, credit memos, anything and everything related to this particular customer. Now if I just wanted to see invoices, I just click this drop down and I click on invoices here, and it shows me this invoice for all dates. Okay, this box here shows me all dates. So I've really only had one invoice with him for $1,506.84. If I wanted to look at his open balance, I can click here on balance details, and it shows here that his invoice has been paid, and I don't think it was connected here. Hold on. Okay, well, so it was separate. So it shows that there's no open balance on this particular invoice that he's paid, and the balance is 0. I just wanted to see all those payments and credits. Again, I think there's a better example of some more detail here. Guess we'll go to Ruth Plumbing here. So we've got a couple payments here for $11,450. 3 invoices here for $23,000. So at a quick glance, I can see various parts of my business with these particular customers. Now, by changing Blue Plumbing to show me invoices, if I click on Jenny Morgenthaler, it's going to show me invoices. If I change her to say I want to see all transactions, then that'll be true for everyone else. So whatever change you make in one is impacting every other customer. Now, to add a customer, you go up here to the button at the top here. It says New Customer and Job. If I click on New Customer, the screen comes up and you would just tab your way through and fill out all the relevant information. So for example purposes, if I open one already existing, maybe Brad here. Generally for sorting purposes, QuickBooks will not do this automatically. You should put last name first and then comma. Will make the list more readable and accessible. So if we put got his name here, you can put in his company name if you happen to be a DBA, or if there's some kind of distinction you want between what shows up on the customer list and the actual company name. There can be a difference here. And then just tabbing your way through. And then all relevant information. Then I click on the additional info tab. This type field enables you to qualify your customers for any reporting purposes you might want at a later point. I had someone ask in a presentation, could I put in here like new business? Could I put in here B&I? Yeah, and then you could do a report and say, I want to see all my B&I customers. I want to see all my new customers and all of that. So there's a lot of different ways to categorize your lists in here, and this is one way to do it. So whatever, again, is meaningful to you. You have customer terms, the tax code, whether they're taxable or non-taxable. Then you have these custom fields here. It's up to 7 per type, customer, vendor, employee, and a total of 21. So in here it's been added birth date and spouse's name. As you can see, spouse's name, that field is on both customers and vendors. So if I want a birth date on the vendors as well, I can check that off, and that field will show up in the vendors. So again, if you don't see some information here, you want to know about your customers, then you create this field to put that in. Yes, you could do all by birth date and then sort it by birth date, and then you could, yes, theoretically, you have to be very careful. This is a alphanumeric field, so although it says birth date, it's not technically a date field. So if you put in, say, what's today, February 5th, so if you put 2/05/09, then you put 02/05/2009, those are 2 different dates in the system. So you have to make sure the data entry is consistent. Payment info, you can put in here for one-time entries, credit card information. I don't know how many of you are aware the new law is really forbidding and really restricting storing electronic information of any credit card information. I don't know if anyone's been impacted in the room by TJ Maxx or I think Bank of America and others whose data was compromised. Well, they're cracking down on every business, big, small, whatever, that you can't store electronic data. So QuickBooks does give you the ability to input credit card information in here. You just have to make sure that once you're done with it, that you delete it. There is now, in the newer versions, if you accept credit cards, that QuickBooks will prompt you, will force you to set up a password and all of that to meet some of the security requirements if you do have credit card data in here. So I think that's a 2009 version.
Right.
That will do that for you. Yes?
Is it possible, if you take phone orders via credit card, is it possible to use QuickBooks to email, and I have their email address, to email a credit card receipt automatically?
Credit card receipt? No, you'd be emailing a sales receipt. You'd be emailing this right here.
Okay, and it could just say via credit card or
Yeah.
something. Okay, good, thanks.
And job info will go over next section. So that's pretty much how to create a customer, and that's the nature of the customer. Okay, recording sales receipts. So remember that the nature of sales receipts is that these are cash customers. So you can use a sales receipt to accommodate any type of payment. So cash, credit card, wire transfer, anything. And to access sales receipt, you just click on the icon on the home page or follow these instructions from within the customer center. And this is a sales receipt. So to kind of go full circle here, if you've done your setup properly, you can create the sales receipt in all of a minute or so. Up in the upper left, because the information will flow, if you tab your way through this sales receipt, you're going to go from the upper left all the way down to the lower right. So in the upper left is your customer list. Okay, so at the least, you could have brought that customer list from another program, so the list is already in there. You can add them on the fly. You can add them right from here. You can add them in the customer list. It's a variety of ways to get the names in here. But if you had your whole list in here, you click the drop down and the entire list will be there. Class, again, like we talked about before, that could be different entities under the same DBA. It could be location. It could be division, type of business, all of that. So again, you would have already created that list when you tab your way through and go through the various other fields. So again, if everything's been set up properly, everything's going to be here for the ready. So I'm going to actually go to one in QuickBooks. So I click on sales receipts, and I'm going to go to one already in here. And that's the same as it's on the binder. So we got Tom Oliveri. So see here, that's from the customer list. It's already in there. Class, from the class list. And this form is fully customizable. So if you wanted to add logos, if there were some fields on here that weren't relevant to you, you're not committed to this particular form. And if you didn't like this template and the ones that QuickBooks offers, you can actually go online to their site and there's free templates you can download and some I think you can purchase. If you, I've had some people say, hey, can you do multi-part? And can you still use a dot matrix printer and all that stuff? Yes, you can. Again, you can get it through QuickBooks website and all that, but usually I've had very few people use anything other than what QuickBooks provides by default. So usually you can do pretty much everything you want to do with a sales receipt or an invoice right within the program. So I tab, the date will be today's date. Okay, the system date in this particular version is 2011, so that's why I'm showing this, but it would show, if I type in T for today, today's date in QuickBooks is 12/15/2011. The sales receipt number will advance automatically. It's your numbering system. QuickBooks doesn't have an internal number system. If you don't put a number in here, I think it starts at 1 and go 1, 2, 3 and all of that. So you can override it and create your own. You can type in if they pay by check, the check number, payment method, Again, cash, check, Discover, any of the various credit cards, you can have in here. How the product shipped, any of the, I haven't seen anyone use this, but I guess you can do shipping through, I think it's Federal Express and UPS, you can print shipping tickets and all of that out of here. So I don't know anyone who's using it, but you do have the capability of doing that. And then FOB, now, again, those fields can be removed if they're not relevant to you. Now the item list, again, what we talked about, the woman asked about, can you just go in and make a deposit? If I assume you're here today because you want to understand some of the intricacies of QuickBooks, you can bypass this whole process and you can go home and say, to get the sales receipts, I'm going to go and record deposits, and here's my deposit, and I'm going to say received from Bayshore Water from account sales, and I received $1,000, and that's it. Okay, you're done. Okay, you can do it as simply as that. But what you're missing is what did you sell. So unless you made your chart of accounts, which we went over before, if you made your chart of accounts, your income section, to have all of these, all the various, so this computer shop, for selling computer services and computer products, you'd have to put all of that on your chart of accounts if you wanted to capture what you sold. So what you're being trained in today is to not use that record deposit process, but to actually use the sales receipt process, which would then require you to create your list of products and services that you provide. Now, when we set up QuickBooks and we told us what kind of entity we were, QuickBooks will create a bare bones item list. So if you're a contractor, it will create some basic, typical products and services that most contractors provide. It's fully customizable like the chart of accounts, and we'll be going over that in the second session. It's an advanced talk, or an intermediate talk, and I'm not going through that this session, but suffice to say, there will be a bare bones list created when you set up the company.
Excuse me, Frank.
Yes.
Filling out all these things, is it advantageous when pulling reports?
Say that again. Was advantageous in what?
When pulling reports?
Yes,
say
absolutely.
You skip the sales receipt. Does that affect what type of report you
Exactly.
pull?
Yes, very much so. And if you're here for the second session, I would show you what that difference is. You would lose a huge piece of reporting and management capability by bypassing this step. Because you should want to know what you're selling and what kind of margin you're getting on it and all of that. So by using this step, you're going to get a lot of detailed information on the various products and services you have, how much you've sold, the margin on it, all of that. So.
Is it like that with all steps? They should all be followed?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
I noticed that there's no customer number on the invoice. Could you set it up?
Yes, you're the first to ask that question. You go back to Customer Center. I think, let's see, account number up there. So again, QuickBooks isn't going to generate that for you. It'll be an internal number, and no one's asked it. I'm not sure if you can add that account number to the sales receipt. You might be able to. I may be able to check very quickly here.
If one of your customers own, say, 4 different properties, you may want you to bill each property differently, right?
Correct, yeah.
If you're a landscaper or you're on a property you're working on, you probably want to build under a different account number.
Right, well, so yes, this does have account number on it. And I don't, it's auto printed. It's not showing up on the screen because you don't have to enter it. If I did a print preview here. See his account number right there? Yeah, it shows up there. The other issue is, and we'll go over this in the second session, just to touch on it, if your customer you're going to work for had varying properties, and you're going to bill each of them, you would actually, I don't think there's an example here, but what I would recommend is versus account numbers, if I drag Eric Gutman under here, he's technically now a job of Jim type. So in theory, what you would have is all the property locations would be under that. So we have your customer here, and then all the properties underneath. That's the way I would do it. The account number would apply to the one leftmost. Yeah, I gotta change that back. Okay, so this description here, again, we'll go over this in the second session, but that can be a standard description that would appear for every invoice and sales receipt you create. So you don't have to type that in every time. Quantity, you put in manually. Price, again, you can put within the setup of the item, and that'll come up every time. Class, you put in manually. Date, you put in manually. The amount will calculate, and taxable and non-taxable will come up automatically according to the setup. So basically all you're doing is going line by line here and picking the particular item that they purchased. So down here at the bottom, if you have QuickBooks Merchant Service, again, if you do a lot of credit card transactions, I strongly recommend you considering the QuickBooks Merchant Service. It's very competitive. The advantage it gives you is a couple of advantages. I can check this box off here, process credit card. All right, that's want to do it. Okay, well. If I had the service, that box would be checked off. I'd hit save and close, and it would process the credit card. And it would indicate to you the reference number for the fact that it's been processed. So you're doing that right within the program. You don't need a swiper. You just need the credit card information from customers, so you can type in all the information here. The other advantage is for any of you who have tried to reconcile your credit card transactions at the end of the month, particularly Visa and MasterCard, it's an absolute nightmare. And the beauty of QuickBooks is the credit card transactions that are processed will connect to your bank statement, and if there is any question and clarification, you can go from right within QuickBooks and get the detail on each of the deposits. So if you had 4 or 5 credit card deposits made in one day, you can go within this QuickBooks program and get the detail of what 5 made up that deposit. You don't have to go to authorize.net. Some of those sites are so difficult to get information out of. They're getting easier, and check it out. This is something I've seen recently. Like authorize.net has the ability now to download into QuickBooks the payments. So that says a lot, that they see that there needs to be some kind of interface with QuickBooks to help people manage their credit card transactions more easily. So, so if that's important to you, again, the merchant services with QuickBooks is very competitive. It might be a little more expensive because you're getting the benefit of having everything processed within QuickBooks itself. If I check off this box here to be emailed, you can email it out of the system, which I discussed earlier. To be printed, I hear this question a lot, particularly for like condo associations and landlords. They have a whole bunch of invoices to generate each month, recurring invoices. You know, they're $500 a month for 50 renters. If you check off that to be printed, and you memorize the transaction, you can generate 50 invoices each month that can either be emailed or printed automatically instead of you having to create 50 from scratch. So if you have mass invoicing every month, there is a way, I'm not going to go over it today, but I'm just planting a seed in your mind that there is a way to use the system to mass print invoices without having to create them every single month.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I do invoicing, and I don't have a thing that says to be emailed or to be printed now at the bottom. I have Pro. Is that the reason why?
No, they shall have that. Sure, this is not unique to Premier. They should all have that ability. Well, invoice should have the same. The bottom to be printed into the email. They shall have standard. Yeah, see how these are kind of like tucked in the corner. The other ones are more spread out here. I don't know. You should have it. There's no distinction. You're welcome. So when you're done, you hit save and new if you're going to enter more. If you're not going to enter any more, you hit save and close and push it out of the screen. Now, QuickBooks has the ability, actually has the default ability to use the undeposited funds as a default deposit to account. And I recommend staying with the default. The only reason you vary from the default, some contractors say, hey, I get paid big money all the time. It's a $10,000 check, it's a $15,000 check, it's a $50,000 check. I take that one check and I go to the bank and I make that one deposit with that amount. So if that's your reality, then if you uncheck this in the setup and the preferences in QuickBooks, then that sales receipt, instead of going into undeposited funds, that amount of money will go right into the bank account. So you can bypass the step I'm about to show you. So for most of us, we get a few checks, we put a deposit slip together, and we make a deposit. So by default, it'll accommodate that. But if yours isn't that, there is a way to do that. Okay, invoices. Again, the difference between an invoice and a sales receipt fundamentally is where does it go from an accounting standpoint. When you hit save and close on a sales receipt, the funds flow to either the undeposited funds or the bank account, depending on how you set it up. For an invoice, it'll go to your accounts receivable. But otherwise, if you look at it, it's pretty much the same. Pretty much all the same information. Yeah.
Say you have a job going on and you're getting payment as groceries. Is there a way to get that back in the invoice so they know how much you've already collected for the balance?
Yes, we're going to go through that. Yeah. So the entry here is just padding through field by field, and you hit save and close, and like I said, it will debit your accounts receivable and credit your income account, and you now have $12,684.48 sitting in your aging waiting to be paid and for payments to be applied. Okay? So the next step you got to do is, so in 30 days you got to check against that particular invoice. The function to do that is to receive payments function. So you can receive partial payments against an outstanding invoice, or you can receive payments in full. So this screen here shows you an example of top one receiving a payment by check. Basically, the variation between two screens is the payment method. So up there, the payment method is by check. Down here is by Visa MasterCard. So depending on which one you check, the following fields will appear. So for the check method, the primary difference is it shows you check note when you type in the check note. And then you can put a memo if you want. For Visa MasterCard, the card number is what pops up, and again, you put that information into it if you were planning to process the credit card. Now notice, it will X out the credit card here on this screen if you entered it in that other screen. But unfortunately, the other screen, it does keep the complete number. It would have to, because you have to know the particular number. So I don't believe there's any encrypting within QuickBooks. Is anyone using in the newer version the credit card processing feature? Because I'm not sure if it does encrypt it or not. I know there's some security in there, but it may encrypt it. So that's the distinction between payment by check and credit card. And what this shows is that QuickBooks has a preference that makes an assumption about how to apply payments. The default preference is to say, apply the payment to the oldest invoice first. And that's typically what happens. You get some money, they're paying off the old stuff first. So, but in some instances, there might be some instances where you want the customer says, no, put the new one, we're in dispute on the old one. So leave the old one sitting in the account. Alright, so if we go home, receive payments. Here we go, we got Dave Duncan. Okay, so I would type in, so I physically got in the mail, got a check from Dave Duncan, sitting with it right in front of QuickBooks, and he's paying me $1,200. Okay, so there's a variety of ways you can handle this here. Okay, so if I uncheck this, that's 0, by checking off this invoice for $1,200, it's going to fill in. Again, there's a preference that says, hey, if you check off an invoice, then I check off the second one, you'll see the total change to $2,880. So if you had a whole bunch of invoices here, instead of me typing it in, I can check off the invoices that I know you paid. And it'll keep a running total in that upper left amount there. That's one way to record the payments. The other way to record the payment is say, okay, you gave me a check for $1,200, and let QuickBooks automatically apply it. So I check that and didn't apply it. I think I got perfect set. Hold on. Automatically calculate, automatically apply. I don't know why it's just going to do that. It might have been because I, let's do the 1680. Alright. Let's hit revert. Let's go that and show that. Let's go to see payments. We'll do Dave Duncan.
Switch to 1200.
Now if I type in 1680, okay, see it checked out there. It was because I changed the other one, that's why. So it automatically applied it, so you put 1680 over there. Okay. Now if I wanted to do a partial payment, do 500 here. Doesn't change it up here automatically because we hit clear here. Go back to Duncan, and I type in 500 here. We'll put the 500 up there, and then it indicates in the lower left that he still owes $1,180. So there's a variety of ways of recording payments in here. Use your drop down to show cash, check, and the various credit cards that you record by. And here's a button if you want to process credit cards internally.
Where does it have his check number or something if he is trying to pay that check?
If I click check here,
Okay,
then
then
we
you enter
type
the
your
information.
check number here. Okay. Yes?
Might be a little late asking this, but if you're selling the same service or product at different prices, is it better to put in different items at different price levels, or to work a discount in either the invoice or the sales receipt?
Are you here for the second session?
Yeah.
Make a note of that, and we'll go over that in a second.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on this screen? This is basically how you receive payments now. Does that answer your question? So if I had a $1,680 invoice, put $500 against it, I hit save and close. So now if I go to my agent, Dave Duncan owes $1,180.
No, I need to show on the actual, invoice I'm sending to.
Okay.
How much they
Paid.
in bills, how much they paid, how much it was.
Okay, so I'm going to see how this invoice is set up. Go back. If I do a preview here. Okay, so if I zoom in on that. So you have here subtotal, sales tax, total invoice, payments and credit for it, and the net owed. Is that what you're talking about? The other,
I just want to do that now, so we're going to do installments, and we will show them what's still remaining.
on the project.
You don't bill for
Right.
maybe
Well, you're talking about progress bill, so you want to show what's left on the project? Okay, that's in the second session. Okay. As an aside here too, you can generate statements out of QuickBooks too. So if you have someone who's late, that's generally when you want to do a statement. So that'll show the history for that particular customer. So you would show all the invoices for that period of time and payments against those invoices, the balance due, and how late those invoices are. So it is possible to produce statements out of QuickBooks which will indicate their invoice and payment activity. No. That's in there. That's under home. That's So deal with customers, create statements. Now the next step is to record your deposits, and if you follow the setup, the default setup within QuickBooks, you're going to have a bunch of cash, credit cards, any other kinds of payments sitting in this undeposited function in QuickBooks for you to basically match them all together according to what you physically went to the bank with a deposit slip or what your credit card statement says, put your bank account for credit card deposits. I'm not going over reconciling credit card deposits today because it's complex in and of itself. We're basically assuming cash or check here. So this is the screen that pops up, and so these are all the various deposits that have to be made. They're a mixture of check and credit card. And you can, what I strongly recommend is if you're reconciling your credit card deposits, you can distinguish here by the various credit cards, Discover, MasterCard, Visa, and just, because you can get a pretty long list here of various deposits that need to be made. So you can use that screen to distinguish of what you're trying to isolate during that specific deposit. So I go over here. So I followed my flow here. I've put in my invoices. I've received my payments. I've recorded my sales receipts. So now the last step is to record my deposits. So by clicking on Record Deposits, this is everything that's sitting in the undeposited fund. So this is basically saying, okay, here it all is. Tell me what your deposit slip was. So now you can say, okay, well, what made up my deposit slip was these three. So this 984727 corresponds to the physical deposit slip you're bringing to the bank. Okay. Now, if these were credit cards, take those bottom ones there, the Visa and MasterCard. Okay. That $1,012.82 will be the exact amount that hit your bank account, which you would see either in your online banking or when you get your bank statement when you're reconciling at the end of the month. So that would match exactly. Okay. Now, some of you might be saying, but there's credit card fees. You're right. And in some instances, those are charged separately on your bank statement as a separate debit, and sometimes they're deducted from what's deposited. So if we took, Amex is a good example, because often they'll deduct it. So we got a $3,078 charge here. So I said, okay, that's the charge I had, but what showed up on the bank was less the fee. So if we said 6%, we have a account in here that created called merchant fees. Okay, so that's the credit card processing fees, and we'll call it $60. So I type in minus 60, and so this $3,018.25, that's what's showing up on your bank statement. So if this was your gross, there's your credit card fee taken out. That's what this bank account. That's what you want to do with your credit card deposits, and within QuickBooks, this is what neatly ties to your bank statement. And if this was made up of 3 or 4 Amex deposits, you could go within QuickBooks and find out what made it up each of them if for some reason they weren't sitting in here. You're like, oh, something's missing. So you can go back and be able to look and track that back. Yes?
So behind the scenes, that $60 is going onto your income statement.
Yep, that will go onto your profit and loss under the expense account, $60. It's showing a negative here because this is an income screen. So it's negative income on expense. So it shows a positive amount on your profit and loss and a negative here.
And the undeposited funds is simply a credit on deposit, undeposited fund that in your operating account.
Right here, yes, it's pulling it out of the deposit funds and putting it in. Yeah, so up here, here's your account. And make sure, remember we had set up the preference to make sure of what account it was going to. So you set up a default to say, when I make deposits, it's going to go to my checking account. But yes, so we would pull it out of undeposited and put it into a checking account. Yeah. Yes?
And are you able to, I think you may have said that, can you print a deposit slip as well?
Correct. She asked if you can print a deposit slip, so if I went up here, I can print a deposit slip, a deposit summary. You can order through QuickBooks. Again, another shameless plug for my website. You can order checks through my website. You get a 10% discount. You can put logos on and all that, and you can order deposit slips. and you can actually print the detail on the deposit slip, or you can just bypass that whole thing and just print a deposit summary, and it will show the detail, and just clip that to whatever you want. And so you don't need a coded deposit slip to get the detail out.
Will the bank accept them?
The deposit summary, that deposit slip, yes, they accept. It'll have, so like I said, you can order checks online. The deposit slips will have the routing numbers and all that.
So, okay.
Be a bona fide deposit slip.
Is my paperwork like
I personally don't know anyone who's using them, so I have not seen them firsthand. Plenty of people use the checks, but not everyone uses deposit slips, so I don't know what they look at that. Let's see, what else? Oh, so you are not confined to this pulling from this list. So in some instances, you may have, for instance, an insurance refund, okay? So if I hit clear here, so let's see what they got insurance. So liability insurance, had an audit, and you got a refund. So
Yeah, right.
$500. We can all wish, right? So, well, I will tell you this. Good contractor story I have is a roofer who, previous to using QuickBooks, had trouble segregating and proving to the insurance company that the guys weren't always up on the roof, that they did some siding and they were on the ground. So climbing up on the roof is obviously a far more expensive thing. So they use QuickBooks to distinguish between what their guys were working on at any given point in time. So the auditor came, and they had all the reports in here, 0 questions from the auditor, took the data as it was, and they saved a ton of money. So that's one advantage to using QuickBooks for any of you who have some real expensive workers' comp and liability issues. If you set up your QuickBooks properly and classifying what your people are working on at a given point, when audit time comes, I've seen this time and time again. These auditors go, wow. They don't ask questions, they take it right out of QuickBooks, and they're gone. So people are amazed. So that's one advantage to using this program, is saving you some money on your audits and saving debate, because if you've got it in paper, it's printed, and everything ties out, there's nothing they can say. So I've heard time and time again, it's a great value to this program, is helping that audit time. So again, so you're not forced in using this screen to come up if you have non-sales oriented money coming into your system. For instance, this time of year, for all of you, you may be putting money into your business. So you would, I don't think it has it in here, but you would use an equity account to record that, basically investment into your company, or you can put it in as a loan on the book saying, well, I'm going to loan the company 10 or 20 grand just to cover payroll for a couple months, and then I want to pay back when the season turns around, kind of thing. So you can use QuickBooks to record those kinds of monies. Just a little tip, that is not income. So if you're doing your own data entry and you put money into your company, it's not income. I've seen it before where someone had their entries, I was helping them get ready for this time of year, and I looked deeper into their sales, and I said, here's an awfully even amount. It was like 10 grand or something. And I said, so there's no name attached to that. What was that from? Oh, no, that was money I put in. The CPA would not have known to look. Okay, he didn't know to look. I raised it because I knew. He would have paid $2 grand in taxes on that $10,000 if he didn't know otherwise. So you're going to be careful of that. So if you're putting money into your business at various points, and you're the data entry person, or your wife or husband or whatever, just be careful of the money's going into the books, that it's categorized correctly. Yes?
Wouldn't you call it owner's equity investment?
Yeah, if it's a sole proprietorship, you put it in as owner's equity investment. I always tell them, saying, now if you put it in as owner's equity as a S corp or you technically kiss it goodbye. So I'd say, would you like the company to pay you back for that? If you do, and it's like, no, I'm not sinking it in forever. I'm just covering payroll for a couple of weeks. You put it in as a shareholder loan, and then you pay yourself back when the summer or whenever things are flush.
Is there a big difference between an investment shareholder loan?
Yeah, because the investment, technically,
Looks like
if no one touches it, and you file your tax return, and no one's caught it, technically it's gone, and you can't pay yourself back, so to speak. I mean, there's a way to get the money out, but once it's filed with the government, it's a tax technicality to try and get the money back out. So always the question is, do I plan on paying myself back on this or not? So when in doubt, create a shareholder loan. That's the easiest thing to do. Because you can always move it down, but you can't always move it back up.
So do you call that a long-term or short-term equity?
I would, well, again, if you're planning to pay back in a year, you could do a short term. So it would be other current liability.
How do you pay yourself back?
Well, you cut yourself a check, so.
And just like me, just talk
Right, so you set up the account in your chart of accounts, and so the original deposit will be a liability to the company, and so you put the deposit in of 10 grand. Then when the summer rolls around and things are flush again, you cut a check out of the company for 10 grand and basically zero that account out. Now the other thing is, I'll probably touch on this again in the second session, but for those of you, is anyone not here in the second session? Okay. When you're recording sales, so if we go back here, and we click on this, and we check off this money we've received. Okay, we all know our reality. We live in a world where, things are tough, things are even tougher now, so sometimes someone slips us some money under the table, and Uncle Sam isn't necessarily going to know about it. What drives bookkeepers nuts is they're like, come on, we had in the books that they owed us $1,200, it's a $1,200 job, and they paid you $1,200 under the table. What do we do with that? Now, I've worked with some smaller companies that 20-30% of their business is cash. And I told them, I said, you have a choice. Forget QuickBooks and just keep everything off the books if you're trying to hide stuff from the government. But if your intent is to manage your business and have a real good handle on it, 20 or 30% on the table is a lot. You're missing a lot there if you're not running it through QuickBooks. So what I tell people is, if you're committed, saying, yeah, I'll get there to get everything above board, but in the meantime, what you can do is this little option down here at the bottom, cash goes back to. So again, you could put it to the shareholder loan account, you could put it to the owner's equity account, you could put it to IRS do not look at this account kind of thing, whatever. You create it, whatever you want. But I will tell you, if you have a lot running off the books, then you may not want to use QuickBooks, because any good auditor will be able to find it. There are ways you can kind of stuff it in various places, and you can be clever yourself. But in your world, the contractor's world, they're looking for that. So if you want to be more legitimate and say, okay, this customer here owed me $1,100, but he paid me cash, you could pick here, I'm just going to use that equity account, so you can call it whatever you want. Cashback memo, so paid cash by Luke, and the cash amount was $1154.52, and then your deposit amount will change. So on your books, they're paid. Their balance is square. You've recorded the level of activity with them, so you've shown $1,200 worth of sales through your books. Your balance is square. They don't owe you anything, and you've reflected that went in your pocket. So that's a way to do that. Because otherwise, either don't use QuickBooks, or you would just go back and delete the invoice if you wanted to do it that way. But you've got to do something, because what drives bookkeepers nuts is like, you didn't tell me that. I'm still showing a result. I sent them an invoice telling me all the money. You didn't tell me you paid cash. So this is the right ways to handle those kinds of transactions. All right, reports. So on the 12th, there's going to be a session, and Christina's not here, and I don't know the exact time. I'm not sure if it's 8 o'clock, but it's in the afternoon. I think it is in the afternoon. There's going to be a QuickBooks reporting and budgeting feature. It's not going to be as long as this. It's probably a couple hours. It's a new thing I've put together. but I'm going to go very deeply into the reporting feature in QuickBooks. I'm only going to touch on reporting today in both sessions. It's not a main focus of the session, so if reporting and budgeting is of interest to you, that's next Thursday. And we can verify the time, whether it's 8 o'clock or 1 o'clock.
It's 3 to 5.
3 to 5, okay, 3 to 5?
Thursday.
Next Thursday, okay? So, to show you some sales reports, actually the report center is a good place. What I always recommend people do in the report center is just, you click on the icon and just, it goes by section, and then on the right hand side are all the various reports. So, I would just recommend just going through and just checking out all the reports, see what they say, and create your favorites. And there's just such depth in here in these reports. For the sales section, we have sales by customer summary. So just click on it, and if everything's in here correctly, we've got some good info here. So I've clicked and changed the date to all, and I'm going to add a column here, percentage of column, and then I'm going to sort it by the total on a descending basis. So what I've got here is within, what did that take me, 10 seconds? So let's just say this was for last fiscal year. So at a glance, I know all my activity by customer for the year in order of the amount. So this is my largest volume customer, Jenny Morgenthaler, and then so on. So from a management standpoint, I look at this and I say, Carl's doing a great job of diversifying his business. If he had here, Jenny was 50 or 60% of his business, he's risking that if she went out of business, then he'd have a real problem. He's losing 60% of his business, but there's no one here that really accounts for much more than 10% of the business. So right off the bat, this shows some good customer diversification. The other thing is more of a touchy-feely kind of a thing in getting a sense of the level of business. I use this at the end of the year for Christmas gifts. So I will have my whole list here, and I'll have a cutoff from a dollar amount level to say, you know, how much business would I do with so-and-so. Everyone above that particular list, I'm going to send a particular gift for that level of business. Sometimes I'll look and I'll say, wow, did that much business? I'll take them out to lunch kind of thing, to nurture the relationship. And then sometimes I'll look down, and I'll look down here at Fran. Fran used to be my biggest customer, and you know, I've just been busy, time's flown, and what happened to her? Give her a call and say, hey, let's go out to lunch, let's see what's going on. I haven't done business in a while. So right at a glance here, you get the nature of your customer base. So that's one report to help you manage your sales. And the other, got the reports in there. Is your sales by item. This is why you want to use the items. We talked about that earlier, the difference between the items and just doing deposits. So if you skip the step and don't use items, okay, this report here, I'm going to change it to all dates. Okay? See how quickly that came up? Okay? Right at a glance. These are all the various products he sells, the various assemblies. That services here. Yeah, service. And these are all the services he provides. So right off the bat, you know, consulting and training accounts for 21% of the business. Okay? And then if you go up, you see software accounts for 6%. So right quick, within a few seconds, you have a breakout of the nature of where the sales come from. You just have the sales by customer and sales by the products and services you provide. Now, if you look over here at the top, you have the gross margin. Okay? So you have the gross margin percentages, again, within a few seconds. So I have a retailer in Falmouth, and she goes, "You're going to talk about me every somewhere?" Because Falmouth's having a tough time. Falmouth retailers are having a real tough time, like a lot of retailers on the Cape. And Falmouth's actually been experiencing a more difficult time a little longer than the rest of the Cape. So how she used this is she had all her various things that she sells as a retailer. She knew what margin, what target margin she was looking for. So anything that was below that margin, she dropped. She would have no way of knowing that from a manual standpoint. She could have an intuitive gut. This tells her at a glance, okay, my target margin is 40%. Anything below 40%, I'm dumping. And that's what she did. She found out higher margin items, and she changed her product mix, and she had a break-even year last year. Okay? How many retailers do you know are either gone bankrupt or were off 20, 30, 40%? Okay? She was able to use this tool to manage her business, to be smart, to say, I'm dropping the low margin items, and I'm moving my company, my sales toward the direction of the higher margin items. And the interesting thing is, she saw some stores copying what she was doing. So that's the power of this. Within a few seconds, you know who your best customers are, and you know what your best products are. Okay, very powerful information that provides. The last one was the aging report. So this tells you at a glance, on the far left-hand side here is your customer list and how much they owe, and if this is a sample file, so if these people owed over varying periods of time, we would populate each of these columns. So obviously we're looking at the ones, maybe 31 to 60 and higher, or 60 and higher, because those are the problem customers. But so at a glance, you kind of know where your receivables are at.
How would you correct something if you knew it's something that you
Uh,
sometimes that I know that something's not balanced.
Well, the cool thing about QuickBooks and most software these days is that I can just double click on this, and then I can go to the actual invoice, and then I can make my corrections there. If there was, this invoice should have been $1,800, it should have been $1,000, I can make that change here. If there were misapplied payments or something, then you would go back to the customer center, and I would go to Duncan, and I could analyze these transactions in here to say, what's my problem here, and isolate it that way. Okay, that's the sales side of things. Any questions on any of that? Okay, now the not so fun side of doing business is paying our bills. Just like the money side, the income side of things, QuickBooks can handle your cash vendors and your credit vendors. So we have some people who will come in and you'll pay them at the time they complete the service. In that case there, you would simply use the write check feature in QuickBooks. The write check feature will pull the money out of your bank account and put the amount, it will debit the related expense account. That's it. That's all you have to do on that side. For the credit side, for those you pay in 30 days, 45 days, or whenever you get the money, use the enter bills function. By doing that, it affects your payables, it increases your payables, and will debit your expense account. And then use the pay bill feature, it'll debit the payables, and it will credit the bank account. And QuickBooks does have a purchase order feature for any of you that use purchase orders. So the purchase order feature, if you use that from the purchase orders, you can create a bill. Anyone use purchase orders? Yeah, so that's a real nice way of tying the bills that you receive to the POs that you had sent out. It's all connected, so good way of controlling things. The vendor center in QuickBooks is virtually identical to the customer center and the format and all that. That's another strength of QuickBooks. There's a lot of consistency in the various features within the program. As you see, this is virtually identical. You didn't know this vendor list unless you look closely. And so let me go through features here. Again, you can click Vendor Center here, or just click on Vendors here. And just like the Customer Center, you can go down here and say, I want to see all bills that I've received from them. that tells you that for last fiscal year, I have received $369 worth of bills. You change this date to all. Okay, so since I've been working with this guy, I've received $1,900 worth of bills, and it's just an open balance of $123. And that $123 is on this last bill dated January 14th. I want to see all the payments I sent to him. This shows all the bill payments I've made. Totals at $1,700 worth of payments. All the checks I've written, in this case none, and so on. So to set up a new vendor, just like in the customer center in the upper left here, you have new vendor. Click new vendor and you fill out the related fields. For example purposes, we'll do Bayshore Water here. So we have Bayshore Water. The one variation I want to show you here is down here, print on check as. So for instance, my business is Integrity Business Solutions. I'm Frank Guinan, DBA is Integrity Business Solutions. So you could have me in there, up at vendor name as Integrity Business Solutions, and print on check as Frank Guinan. We get some people who say, you know, can you make a check out to me personally, kind of thing. So if there's variation between the company name and what they want on the check, that's the field we would use to do that.
Why can't we make other lists for other vendors? Or something that's really common, like say, other vendors.
Yeah, there's this other list here, other name list, right here. These are for, they're not a customer, they're not a vendor, they're not an employee. So if you are using if you're a small business, sole proprietor, and you're using your checking account to write out personal bills and all that stuff, this is the list you would use for that, okay? Because they're not a vendor, you're paying your mortgage out of their checking account, you're paying personal bills, whatever. So this list would contain the names of all those they use. Okay? Yes?
So if I read this right, then that wouldn't affect the preparation of the 1099 because you're making a check out to somebody else.
Correct. So when you look on the vendor, when you go to 1099s, this box down here, so this box, vendor eligible for 1099, is only for vendors. Okay, it's not for the other names list, you don't have that capability. So 1099s are associated with vendors, and you check off that box, input their tax ID.
Well, I understand that, but making the check payable to somebody other than maybe what's in your card for your vendor file, you make the check out to ABC company, but it's doing business with something else.
Oh, you mean this field here? This field you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, that won't affect 1099.
So it would go to the company name.
Correct,
And
yeah.
not to do tax.
Correct, yeah.
Did you quick out this list of your 1099 vendors?
Yes. That, we will go over, you're here for the second session? We'll go over that. Okay, so print on check as. Additional info, just like the customers, you can put in your account number with them. You can put in the type of vendor here, terms, credit limit. Here's that custom field I showed you before, spouse's name. Then an account pre-fill. All that means is that, and this is good if you had a particular, like Staples, if you had Staples, you had, say, paper products, computer supplies, and all of that, you could put these accounts in here so that when you went in to write a check to, in this case here, Bayshore Water, it pre-fills all those accounts. See, it says go to pay bills, so there's a bill in here and all that, so that's a good warning. So all those accounts pre-fill. So if you know there are standard accounts, multiple accounts that you're always going to split in a transaction, you can use that account pre-fill. Now, what it will do by default, what I told you earlier, is if you didn't do that and you recorded a check split here, the next time you wrote out a check to Bayshore Water, that split would be there anyway. So this is just another way of accomplishing that breakout. Yes?
So you have 5 invoices from the same person, you paid them all at once, and they all have invoice numbers, and you're writing only one check for them, or regardless of it's one check or 5. How do you get that invoice number to show, like you go to the pay bills, you go click, 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 write a check. How do you get those invoice numbers to print on the check?
They should print on the check. Everything that you pay should print on the check stub.
They weren't.
That's how I've used it. I've seen it. That's what it does. If you pay 5 bills, different bills, it'll show on the stub each bill that was paid.
Oh, no, okay, not on the stub, but I mean on the check itself.
You'd have to do that manually.
Okay, because the only thing that shows up with the memo is the account number.
Is the account number, right? So
So
that's,
there's no way to get it on the, other than having the long stuff.
no.
Okay.
Back to center. Okay, that's all I want to show you about the vendor input. There are notes that you can put in here on both the customers and the vendors. So if I wanted to, the date stamp that I spoke with Jim about outstanding invoice has been paid, and I hit OK. So now, again, quick reference, I can see any interaction, verbal interaction with vendors. You can also do this in customers. So if you wanted to, there is a limit to how much text you can put in here. It's a pretty good amount of text you can put in, but it is limited. And if you had a lot of notes, you could just lower this and see all the notes. If that was important for you to have a quick reference to. Okay, so you can talk about some of this earlier. Paying vendors. Okay, there's again, just like you can receive money from your customers, there's a variety of ways you can pay your vendors. As this list here, the 3 common ways of paying your vendors is running around with one of those big bank registers, the blue books, whatever. Or I heard someone earlier talking about a one-write system, whatever. So you would be manually writing checks to your particular vendors, and then what you have to do is take whatever is in your register and put it into QuickBooks. Okay. Now, I recommend, from a control and management standpoint, of moving away from that. You can lose your checkbook. If you wanted to know your balance, most people I see that carry that around usually don't carry their balance forward. They wait. They either look at their deposit slip when they're leaving the bank down, that's all right, or they wait till they get their bank statement. So I strongly recommend at least doing step B, which is purchasing checks and cutting the checks out of QuickBooks and printing them and mailing them. Now, you can take 2 or 3 of those computerized checks and carry them around with you. And what you would do is, I always recommend getting the voucher checks. Those are 3 parts. The top part is the check, the bottom 2, the very one at the bottom is for you to keep, the other one is for the vendor to keep. So if you're running around paying some bills, you tear off the bottom stub and you can give it to whoever's entering the data and say, here, I just did this afternoon, and then they would record it. So at least you have some kind of record of what you paid, the check number, and all of that. The third step is using the payables feature in QuickBooks, and I recommend that because that's our reality. I've been in a lot of small business offices and looking at the way bills are paid. There could be an accordion file, or there could be an outbox, or there could be a manila folder full of bills, and you just kind of shuffle through it. It might be organized by date or by whatever, or it's just a stack that just goes in as the bills come in. What you can do with QuickBooks is you open the mail for the day, and as you get the bills, you put them in QuickBooks. And then you can do whatever you want with that paperwork, put them into that accordion file or whatever. But what you're going to have within QuickBooks is a nice, neat, electronically organized summary of, just like I showed you on the receivables, I'll show you on the payables. Who do you owe? How much do you owe them? Are there any discounts? Like Shepley's offers you discounts if you pay them in a certain period of time. Are there any discounts? And when's the due date of the bill? And if I haven't paid them, how long has it been sitting there for? Okay? So instead of shuffling through your paper and going, oh no, that was due last week kind of thing, that'll be in QuickBooks, and it'll tell you that, instead of you having to go through a pile of paperwork. So hopefully if you're using it regularly, if you're using it weekly, you won't miss a bill, because you entered it in and you'll pay it before it's late. So, like I said, what I recommend is using the write checks feature. And QuickBooks, like Money and Quicken, you can use a register in QuickBooks. It's very limited, the amount of information you can put in, and I've seen some people do that. And the write checks feature gives you all the capability of entering as much information you want, items, classes, all of that. So I always recommend using the write checks feature. So let me show you that. So you have down here the write checks feature. So I click on that. If we look at one that's already been recorded. So the default account will show up according to that preference you set. And if I have, when I tab through, it can ask for the number. Now, if you're recording debit transactions, debit card transactions, this is not limited to numbers, so I can type in debit here. You can record online, you can record anything alpha, so phone, pay, whatever you want, whatever communicates to you, it's paid, so it's not a number. If it is a number, and I go through, I can advance it with the plus key, or it will automatically advance to the next one as you're doing, just like with the sales receipts and invoices. So that's the right number. With the calendar, same thing, it can be advanced by the plus key or go backwards by the minus key. If you type in T, that'll be today's date, and the today's date should come up automatically. Or you can use the calendar button here and pick whatever date. Just like on the accounts, on the invoices, you've already got your vendor listing here, which again you can import from Excel if you have a big list sitting somewhere else. And this amount, so if I go save and close, so if I type in a new check for Cal Telephone, see how it pre-filled? 123.18. So that's the amount of my last check I wrote, and it's to the telephone account. So I don't have to remember, because sometimes you'll have some transactions that you're like, oh, I don't remember what account I put that to. So by that feature I set up in the beginning, it's going to pick that last account and do the last amount. So you don't have to think about it. So if you're always paying 123.18 to Cal Telephone, this check is done. You hit save and new if you want to go to a next check or save and close. So again, you have here the list of expenses you put in here. So just a general caveat for you people who won't be here in the second session. The expense tab is for overhead, insurance, automobile expense, rent, office supplies. That's all you should be categorizing your accounts here to. If it's job related, you're using items. And that's this long list here that I showed you earlier of this Carl's computer that shows the services he provides and the products he sells and all of that. So if you're recording a job-related check or bill, you would use the items tab. For reasons I will show you in the next session. Okay? So if it's an expense, if it's overhead, you're going to use the expense tab. If it's job-related, you're going to use items. And I know it's a little confusing because they showed here, well, I can put it to a customer job here. If you do that, you will forfeit a certain level of reporting within QuickBooks, again, which I'll show in the next feature. So you should never use customer job on this expense tab. It's always the items tab. Okay? So, and I'll demonstrate that in the next section.
Can items be a service?
Yes. Yeah. Consulting, something like that. What else here? So if you wanted to print this check, I would click to be printed. And if this was it, this is all I was going to do. I can print from here. I can hit print. And it should come up with the next number. And I'll hit OK. And as you see here, this is the, you have the choice of voucher, standard, and wallet. I always recommend voucher because for record keeping, they get to keep a piece, you get to keep a piece. So if you're purchasing checks, pick a voucher.
How did it turn off? Mine always is to be printed and I ask put it on each time, but it doesn't.
Right. I think it defaults according to the oldest check or the newest check in there. So if you check off the last check to be printed as not to be printed, every successive check should be service, not to be printed.
Do you find print checks?
Well, there's a variety of ways. So the one I just showed you was up here. There's a button here to print. So if I click that.
That's only if you buy the service.
No. This is if you buy checks.
You buy the check.
Buy the checks, you put them into your printer, you're going to print them out of your printer.
Okay, but you buy that from QuickBooks.
Right, the checks, you can get from the checks, QuickBooks website. And by the way, the bank checks, the way they're set up, they're three-part. They'll have the top part will be a stub, the middle part will be the check. And unfortunately, I met with a client who had a whole stack of checks, with the top part being the stub and the middle part. You can't use that with QuickBooks. So their stub, the order of the stubs, is as is shown here. The top part is a check and the bottom two are the stubs. So that's the QuickBooks style of check. So when you're ordering checks, whoever you order it through, you got to make sure it's in that format. Check at the top, stubs at the bottom. Yes.
Can you customize the check template to put a logo or anything on it? Do you want to order them that way from the bank?
Yeah, these two boxes here, I haven't seen anyone do it. I'll tell you this, again, through my website or through Intuit, when you order the checks, they're so incredibly customizable, and it's a really easy process, and they'll show you as you're customizing the check, it changes on the screen. It's really cool. You can add a logo, you can write when you're ordering the check, you can change the colors, you can change where things appear. So I would recommend doing it that way. I don't know anyone who's done it here, printing the company name and address and using the logo here, but it is doable.
What about scan signature? I hate to sign in checks all the time. So the software I use now, I found a way to scan my signature on the template and it prints out in the batch.
Good question. First, it's been asked, and I don't have an answer for that. I don't know anyone who's doing that. Just everyone's with the stamp.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen that anywhere. So you have software that does that?
MYOB.
Okay.
I went to that years ago. It was the first one to download that Excel, and it was the first one that let me customize the template and their software.
Well, if you wanted to exchange email addresses, I could do a little research on that to see if QuickBooks has that capability. But it's the first it's been asked, first I've been aware of it. Okay, so that's writing and printing checks. The other place you can go to print checks, well, actually here, you can print a batch. So if I had done a whole bunch in here, I was on my last check and I wanted to print, I input 4 checks. So you can print the batch right out of here, and it will go with the first check number, the last check that you want printed. And you can say, well, I just want to print 2 of them, so you have complete control over what you print. And make sure it's printing from the right account. If it prints from the wrong account, you just have to go back and reassign it. It's not unforgiving, but it's just you have to reassign it to the right account. The other place to do this is up here, File, Print Forms, Print Checks. So either way, you can print your checks. And also on the home page down here, print checks. So many ways to do it. Okay, entering bills. So again, I encourage this feature because it's our reality. You get a bill and we don't pay it for 30, 45 days. So I would encourage all of you to consider using this particular feature. So to access it, you can click the Enter Bills icon, you can go to the menu, you can go to the vendor section. There's a lot of ways to access this, and this is what pops up. This is not customizable. But like the check and all the other forms, you're just going to tab your way through each field and determine what you're going to enter. So the vendor comes from the vendor list. The date will be today's date. The reference number is their bill number to you. Okay, that's very important to input. I think someone was touching on if you had multiple bills, you'd want that reference number, their reference number on that. And I believe that reference number it shows up on the stub, so they know what you've intended to pay. Bill due date will go according to the terms, so this vendor is net 30, so it went from 12/15 to 1/14 for the due date of the bill. I believe this memo, that's what will show up on the check. And then remember expenses for overhead, so the bill here is for accounting fees, from $500, and then pick the class on the end. If it was for relating to jobs, customers, you click on the item tab and enter the relevant information there. As far as paying bills, you click on the Pay Bills feature, and these are all the bills you've entered. Okay, and you have a variety of ways of manipulating the screen similar to the receipt payments on the customers. So let me go through all of that. So we're going to enter bills. Now, this is an example of one that was customer-oriented. So, Larson Peripherals is Carl's computer shop. It's kind of like Shepley's is to some of you out there. So, they're providing the materials and stuff that they use to sell their systems. So, Larson Peripherals is from their vendor list. I tab today's date. That's their bill number, 5235. The amount due, you just type in. Now, the bill due is in 30 days, but this one has a discount. So 1%, 10 days. So QuickBooks has some default discount terms in here. And it'll automatically let you know what the discount is. So on 12/25/2011, if you pay it by then, you're going to get the 1% discount. And then these are all the items from the item list. And again, a lot of this will pre-fill if you've done your setup properly. So this is basically a materials bill. We'll talk about this a little more in the next session, but if you notice here, POs, for any of you that do use Shepley's, that are a builder-oriented contractor, I guess even landscapers for your material suppliers, you could, those, I don't know, the pink slips you get from Shepley's or white slips or yellow slips, those slips you leave with would be equivalent to a PO. And you'd enter those in daily. Because I know one of the nightmares you have, depending on the level of activity you have, is reconciling a Shepley statement, Midcape Home Center statement, and all of that relative to your paperwork. So if you enter in each of those individual pink slips daily from whoever's going out getting materials, you can create this bill from all those individual POs, and it will tie out to the statement you're receiving from Shepley's or whoever your material supplier is. So we can touch on that more in the next session, but again, for those who are leaving, POs is a good way to get that, because I know some contractors who might have 2 or 3 slips a day, so they might have close to 100 slips, but they got to tie out on this multi-page statement from Shepley's or some of the others.
So I should do a PO for everything that I experienced too?
No, this is different. This is for the contractors. Yeah. This is because I've seen it, and I guess you can all get them electronically now and all of that. So that saves some paperwork, but still, to reconcile and make sure you're getting billed properly, you have to go through the whole statement. So this is one way to tie all that up. So once I'm done with this, I hit save and close. If I was doing any kind of overhead kind of expenses, I would pick from this list here. So now I want to go to pay my bills. So I click pay bills. And here's all my bills. Okay, if I wanted to say, well, I want to see the ones due, this might be this particular week in here, it narrows it down to that one bill. So you have some control on what you see. So if I show all bills, it gives me my total payables outstanding right now of $22,000. One thing too is that for those of you bookkeepers and managers, you have in here under vendors and payables, unpaid bills detail report that you can print up, give to the owner and say, hey, this is what we owe, and check off what you want me to pay this to. You print that out, give it to them, they check it off, and you go back in here to this screen and pay whatever's relevant. So on this screen, you have a lot of flexibility. You can sort bills by vendor. You can do it by due date or amount due. So here's the due date, and this is in, looks like us ending order. So you can, like we did in the other screen, the receipt payments, you just check it off. So as soon as I'm paying the whole bill, by checking it off, 45.45, it's the whole amount of the bill, and it keeps a running total. So if I check off the next one, I'm now going to running total. Now notice here, my checkbook balance is down here, and it deducts from it. Some of the other sample files I had, the cash balance was less, and that number turned red when you're trying to pay more bills than you had cash for. So be aware of that. If you see red, you know you've got to uncheck a couple things. Now, Larson peripherals. Okay, so we're at the date for the discount. So we say, okay, I want to use the discount. So I can hit here, set discount. I can pick my discount account, which would be purchase discount, and pick the class for the base show store, and hit done. Now, the only thing I see is rounding. Okay, so Shepley's may say your discount is $45.50, and QuickBooks is calculating $45.45. So you can type over this and do $45.50, and it will calculate it accordingly. Okay, so you're not committed to the number that QuickBooks calculates, but at least it prompts you that you're eligible for a discount, and it does an approximate calculation. So if you've got Shepley saying you're entitled to a $20 discount, and this is saying 45, so hey, what's up? Why don't they match? You can kind of trace that one. Right here, set discount. So I highlighted the one with the eligible discount, and I hit set discount, and it came up with a number, and then I just have to pick the various accounts first.
How do you correct the balance on the check?
And checking?
The ending balance, because mine is showing all under the stuff. Someone sitting with that account.
Well, that's another issue. Another issue. But here, what this is doing is it's deducting and showing you the impact on your bank account, so you know if you have enough money to pay these bills. So if you said, things are looking a little tight, and you want to do a partial payment, saying, no, I'm going to pay him $2,000, you can do that, and then the next time around it'll show $2,500 over instead of $40. So you're not committed to making full payment here. Now the other thing here is paying by credit card. If you have within your chart of accounts, and I strongly recommend this because I know most of you probably have a company credit card, you can internally set up in QuickBooks an account type called credit card. So if you do account new, see here, credit card. QuickBooks will recognize it as a credit card. You can reconcile it just like a bank account, and you can download into it just like a bank account. And what it enables you to do too is on the pay bills feature, if you wanted to pay by corporate credit card, you have that choice now. So I pick credit card, and if you had in here Capital One, American Express, Discover, you have those choices of which credit card you wanted to pay this particular bill. Now, it's not going to process this credit card in here and get it over to the Discover card. It's just recording a transaction that you didn't pay for this by check, you recorded it by credit card. And it's going to adjust the balance on your books for what is owed to Discover and Capital One and all of that.
You can pay partial on those too.
With the credit card? Yep. And now, if you wanted to go back to paying by check, you can assign check numbers. For those of you who say, great suggestions, Frank, but I love my blue checkbook, so I'm going to continue to do that, then you can do that here, so you can reflect that bills are paid. When I hit pay selected bills, okay, I can put in my check number for my manual register plan. Okay, I paid that with check number 123. I paid that with check number 124. Paid that with check number 125. So you can get your manual register information into QuickBooks for paying bills this way. And that's what I wanted to show you on this screen. Any questions on any of that? Really flexible. Yes. Yes. Correct. That's somewhat probably a lot of you would be interested in that. What we can do is show you that. If you went home and put bills, okay, now follow this carefully because you can do this for any transaction. You can do this for any of you have third-party payroll and you have payroll journal entries, you can do it for this. If you have customer invoices and you want to do this regularly, so pay attention.
What was the question?
The question was, can you enter in a recurring transaction that is entered into QuickBooks on a regular basis, like monthly bill or something? So you can do that for any transaction in QuickBooks. So this applies to invoices, sales receipts, journal entries, all of them. So if we take this bill here from Larson Peripherals and I go up to Edit, Memorize Bill, okay? So memorize invoice, memorize journal entry, memorize deposit, memorize whatever. I click that. Okay, and you can't do it against purchase orders, so I'm going to clean the bill on that one. Okay, so Edit, Memorize Bill. So here, I would call it my accountant's bill. Whatever you want, that's up to you, whatever's clear to you. And I could say here, automatically enter. Remember when I was talking about those invoices as a landlord? This is where you would hit automatically enter. And you would say how often. I want to do it monthly. The next date is the next date that you anticipate you want that to hit your books. You can put number remaining. So if you knew I'm only going to do this for 1 year, so I only want 12 in there, otherwise it will do it forever. So if we just said I'm going to do this for 12 months, in days in advance, I want to enter it in 5 days in advance so that I can show the bill paid. If I hit OK, and I go up here to my memorized transaction list, there it is, accounts bill. So it will automatically, on December 10th of 2011, will automatically enter that bill, and that will show in your pay bills screen. Now this is some advanced topic, I'm not going to get too deeply into this, but suffice to say that you can do this for, invoices, and you don't have to have it enter automatically. You can just tell it, remind me, and then you have control over it. You can set it up to print, so that to be printed, it would automatically print it. So there's a lot of variation here in what you can do with it. And I'm going to delete it. Any other questions on that? Okay, as far as reporting, again, you go to our report center. You have a vendor section in here, vendors and payables. So you can show your aging. And this shows, again, just like the receivables, who you owe on the left, how long you've owed them for, and the amount owed. So if you start seeing things pushing up too far, you know you've got to deal with it. Oh, a little tip. Remember I told you about negative numbers? If you see negative numbers on your receivable aging or your payables aging, you've got problems. Typically why that happens is on the receivable side, you've entered in a payment without a related invoice. Now some will say, well, they do have a credit balance, I received enough from deposit. And that's fine, a negative number is fine. But more often than not, usually it's not fine. They're like, I don't know what those negative numbers are for. No, they don't have a credit balance. Then it's simply because you didn't enter an invoice against that payment. So that's how you would get it out of there. Same thing on the bill side. You entered in a bill payment, but you didn't have a bill in there. Okay, so, or you entered in a bill credit, and you don't have anything to apply that to. So if you see negative numbers in here, and CPAs go nuts over this because a lot of smaller companies not knowing how to use the agents properly, they'll see a lot of negatives, and I usually go in and help train people to clean that up and keep that from happening. So if you see negative numbers in there, it's a problem. Yes?
When you set up to pay recurring bills and it prints it automatically, so you should do that next time you go to print a check?
Well, the thing she asked me to show to enter a bill, it's not going to print that automatically. It's going to put it in your pay bill screen automatically. So it's going to show on your list as something you have to pay. I was talking about a customer invoice, but that will print that automatically, print it out so you can mail it or whatever you want to do with it. And it'll come up in a queue. So it'll come up and say, these are ready to print. Do you want to print them now? You say yes or no. So it won't start kicking them out. You've got checks in there, you've printed 40 invoices on all your checks and all that. No, it won't do that. It'll prompt you. Yes?
So just so I'm clear on this, if we have negative numbers, it's just because we didn't follow the steps that we're supposed to follow as far as invoices and...
Typically, yes. Or you set up an account wrong. Say that again?
So if you just follow all your steps, like how we talked about previously, you shouldn't have to deal with that. Unless
You shouldn't have to. Yep.
But if your phone didn't turn in with a yet and you paid the $12
Well, when it shows up here, usually what's happened is someone did pay a bill and it was matched and fine, but then they deleted the bill for some reason. So now the bill's gone, but you have the payment there. So that's typically what happens, because you can't enter a bill payment without a bill. You can receive a payment from a customer without an invoice, but you can't pay a bill without a bill in
How can you
QuickBooks.
receive, how do you receive a payment from a customer without an invoice?
Oh, very easily. Very easy. It happens all the time. So you go in here, so I go Duncan, well, I gotta find someone without an invoice in here.
Is prepaying?
Hold on here. Invoice. Yep, you can use this feature for deposits you've received from people. You do Eric Dunn.
This is if you don't have an invoice.
Correct. So, Eric Dunn, $100. I hit save and close. It's prompting me going, well, you really shouldn't be doing this. You should have an invoice, you should print a credit memo, you should get a refund or something. But I'm saying, no, this is what I want to do because it gave me upfront money. I'll put the invoice later when the project progresses. So now I have $100. And if I go to the aging, there he is, it's negative $100. So that's why I would see that and I go, hey, you've got a negative amount in here for Eric Dunn. Yeah, he gave me a deposit and that's fine, that makes sense. Or he does have a credit balance. Okay, so that's okay to do. And I tell people in the contractor world, there's some real technical ways you can receive upfront customer deposits. The simplest thing I say is just do what I just did and put it here because in essence this shows that you owe them work for the upfront deposit you got from them. Instead of getting real fancy from an accounting standpoint and creating a customer deposit account, because the way you're going to record the rest of the transactions from the customer, to have it go to a customer deposit account makes it difficult. So the easiest thing I say is just put it in the receipt payment screen and deal with it later. Yeah?
I would think the most important thing is if somebody offers you money, you always say yes.
Yes. There you go. Yeah.
I just-
Figure it out later.
If somebody was gonna give me $500 on a deposit and I haven't figured out the job yet, whatever, I'm always just plug in their name, write $501 for the invoice, just throw it onto whatever, labor, pay the $500, and it's always gonna flag up that $1 too, so that's how I keep track. I never realized you could even put money in without an invoice. I was
Well, you
surprised.
can, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sorry.
And we'll talk about this later, but generally from a job costing standpoint, I'll pose the question to the contractor and saying, okay, you got $5,000, $10,000, you got it for something, right? Did you get it because you got to pay your excavator? Did you get it because you're buying some lumber? Did you get it? Yeah. Okay, well then create an invoice for those amounts from your estimate, right? Because you're in essence paying for something ultimately within the next 30 days or something. So the key issue from a CPA standpoint is the carryover from one year to the next. So if you got $10,000 on December 15th or December 20th, then that creates a tax issue. And so I always tell them, just put it in there, it raises a flag, and you discuss it with your accountant if they want to have you handle it a little differently. So the negative will make it jump out. That's everything I wanted to show you. Okay. Any questions on vendors and expenses and all that? Beg your pardon? The last section here is reconciliation. As an accountant and as a trainer, I consider this one of the most important parts of our session today because if you do your reconciliations on a monthly basis for all your accounts, believe me, I've dealt with pretty large companies, and I'll go in there, and they've had using QuickBooks for years. I'm talking $1 million companies that haven't reconciled their accounts. I've had companies that reconciled some because they don't want everyone knowing the company, their business, and all of that stuff. And I've gently tried to say, you're opening an accounting can of worms by not doing that. So just my general rule is every bank account you have as an entity, reconcile on a monthly basis. Because what that will do is when tax time comes, you're communicating to your CPA that every transaction's in there. if you've reconciled all your bank accounts and all your credit card accounts, they're going to be thrilled. I mean, I've worked with people that went from nightmare to just everything balanced to the penny, where accounts are like, wow. That will drop your fee too, as well. It should drop your fee, because that's one of the steps they go through when they're doing their taxes. And a larger company here, the more true this is, their task at the end of the year when they're doing your taxes is to make sure that all your balance sheet balances tie out. So your bank account balances, your credit card account balances, your loan balances, and all of that. So if you've already done it in here, there's not much they have to do except verify, saying, okay, QuickBooks says this, the bank says this, great. Instead of QuickBooks says this, the bank says this, they're off by thousands, and they're going to charge you to get those numbers to work. So if you've done all the work, and you've balanced it on a monthly basis, then it'll save you some money in the tax preparation. So the accountant from the reconciliation knows that everything's in here. Where I come in is to help you to make sure it's all in the right place. So that's where the negatives and all that come through. So the best practice is to do this on a monthly basis for all your accounts, including credit card accounts. And the process is so easy. I'm going to show you today how to make it real easy, some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years. So there's a variety of ways to get into reconciliation. You can click on the reconcile icon. You can go to the menu. A lot of ways to do it, and this is the screen that will come up. So what you see here is make sure you balance in the right account. So in this case here, it's the working checking account. That statement date is the ending date from your bank statement. The beginning balance, notice how that's grayed out? Okay, you can't change that number. That number should match the beginning balance of your bank account, your credit card, or whatever. If it does not, QuickBooks does provide a way, as I say here, what if my beginning balance doesn't match? They'll provide a way for you to fudge it. As a trainer, I say don't fudge it. If you've been working with QuickBooks for years and you've been reconciling fine to the penny, then hey, you're in a hurry and it's off a penny. Maybe you just fudge it because you don't have time or whatever. But everyone I train, no one fudges it. You know, I slap them on the hand if they fudge it. And I give them a hard time because from an account standpoint, if you're off by a penny, you might as well be off by $1 million. You know, that's the reality. So if that happens, don't fudge it. If I'm working with you, I'll show you how to diagnose that and remedy that. The help in here is okay to help you deal with it, but don't fudge it, don't force it. Find that, whatever it is, I'd say find the penny. At least early on in you working with the program. The ending balance is again from the bank statement, and you type that in. Notice that's a box, and you can type in that amount. Down here you have the breakout between the service charge and the interest earned. The service charge again comes from the bank statement. Make sure this date will correspond to that date. If you haven't done the reconciliations in a while, if it's a fairly inactive account, this date may not be correct, so just keep an eye and make sure that those dates correspond to the proper dates. This account, you pick bank service charges. Every successive time you do the reconciliation, these dates and these accounts will come up automatically, and interest you would just type in. So basically all you're doing is going through and matching what's in QuickBooks to what's on your bank statement. Now another advantage to using online banking, if your cash balance is important to you, and again, it's important to all of us, but larger companies with larger numbers and payrolls and all of that. I've had large contractors that I've worked with that by using the online banking, using it properly, they've had their actual cash balance on a daily basis. I mean, that's powerful to know, exactly how much cash you have. Because bank, whatever number they give you, that doesn't account for outstanding checks and deposits and all of that. So if you've used the online banking process, when you come to the reconciliation, pretty much everything's accounted for, and it makes the reconciliation real snap as well. So this is the screen that comes up. On the right-hand side are deposits. On the left-hand side are checks and payments. So that will include debit transactions as well. So let me go through this and demonstrate this for you. So I click on the reconcile icon, and here's my account checking. And as I said, all this information is fine. Here's my, well, because I've done this before, the service charge and the interest is already in there. So I hit continue. And as you see down here, this is your goal. Your goal is to get this difference to 0. Okay? So just fundamentally, you have your bank statement sitting in front of you, and you're just basically checking off whatever's clear. I always tell people start with the deposit side because usually that's the side with the least discrepancies. And it gets you a little flow. You know, if you've done your deposits and all that, it's kind of like, oh good, now I jump over to the check side. And there's usually a lot more transactions here. And if you have debit transactions, I mean, I've seen people here with 2, 3, 4 dozen transactions on the right-hand side. So we can get pretty confusing. So you're just checking off whatever's clear. Now, let's see. Now I'll show you some tips to make the reconciliation easier. Because for any of you that are decent size, you can have dozens on both sides of the screen here, and it can get very, very cumbersome. So we have. Oh, I must have that in there twice. Well, part of my reconciliations, I have Cal Telephone in here twice. That was one I must have entered as part of that memorized transaction thing. So if something's in there and shouldn't be in there, you can just double click on it. It'll bring you to it. And it's like, no, that's a duplicate, and I want to delete it. So I hit edit, delete check, and I hit OK, and I go back to my reconciliation. So that's gone. 2242. 2347 and 2350. Okay, so when you open it up for the first time, everything's going to be blank. Okay, so nothing's checked off. So the first step I tell people to do to really expedite the process is if I click this box here, notice this transaction here should disappear because it's after the date here of, well, let's change that to 12/30. If I click this, so anything after 12/30 will disappear. So if I had on my, it's usually reconciled in the middle of the month. So the statement date for January to January 31st, in the middle of February, so everything after January 31st will disappear. So it will clear up a lot of transactions, again, if you have a very active account. So that's step one. The next step is to hit mark all. So if I hit mark all, so my deposit total should be $48,513.93. That's from my bank statement. So that's what it says in the lower left. So I'm done with my deposits. Okay? So picture if you had a couple dozen deposits in here, instead of me going clicking each one by one, you assume that they're all in there. You'd probably be checking off maybe the last 2 or 3 because they might have kicked into the next month. They're recorded in the month. So instead of checking off 24 of these, it automatically checked them off for me. Now on the check side of things, I would be basically going through and looking at my statement and unchecking what hasn't cleared. So in here, 2342, 2347, and notice on the right-hand side how my it's moving towards 0, 2352, and then that 123.18, and now I'm at 0. So if you can just picture in your head, for any of you that have a lot of transactions, I have just unchecked 4 transactions instead of checking 2 or 3 dozen transactions here. So when I'm flying through reconciliations, helping clients, I mean, I've done huge reconciliations in 10 or 15 minutes that have taken some people hours. Yeah, I have some experience in that, but once you're comfortable with this process, I mean, reconciliations are a real snap. Okay? So that's the trick to get this done easily. So I'm at my 0, so I'm done. I hit reconcile now. And what I recommend is what's going to come up on the screen is to give you the option to print reports. I recommend you, particularly if you have QuickBooks Pro, to print the reports because QuickBooks Premier will save your reports going back forever. So if you had QuickBooks Premier and your file is 10 years old, you can get a reconciliation from 10 years ago. You might say, well, why would I want to do that? Well, what I've seen happen many times is because, say we have the closing date of 12/31/08. So during the course of 2009, say it's July, and I've reconciled all the way through June, I come into July and that balance is off. And I'm like, yikes, the balance is off. And then, so with QuickBooks Premier, you can go back and print. Say the error was you deleted something from March. You can go back in and have that reconciliation from March handy to know what all the transactions were in that period of time. The other cool thing that QuickBooks will do, both versions will do this. If you click Reports, Banking, Previous Reconciliation, this bottom choice here, this will reprint your reconciliation. Now QuickBooks Pro will only go 1 month back. QuickBooks Premier will go way back. We'll print the reconciliation with any changes that took place to the deletions or additions or anything that anyone might have done in a period of time. And again, so for this time of year, if someone inadvertently changed something after it was given to the accountant and the bank balance changed and all of that, you could print that, give it to the accountant and say, oh, this is what we did, because they're typically what they want is your last month's statements, your bank statements, your credit card statements, and all that. So if something had changed, and with QuickBooks Pro, you can only go 1 month back, and QuickBooks Premier, you can go back forever. And that way you can isolate what may have happened within that reconciliation by comparing the old with the new. The other thing here is, if you go up here, locate discrepancies, you have a discrepancy report, and that will list the transactions that were changed, added, and deleted. But you can't double click and go back, it's technically gone. So it'll tell you $50 was deleted on January 5th, and it was this check number, it was whatever. So then you can kind of go back and look and say, well, should that have been deleted, and why? Maybe you have to put the check back in. But that will give you a report of what had changed from statement to statement.
This is only that if you have
No, this is for everyone. This is everyone would. All these features I'm showing you here, with the exception of printing a previous reconciliation from 6 months ago, QuickBooks Pro has all of this. It has nothing to do with online banking. This is all within QuickBooks. So what I recommend for you to do is, particularly smaller companies that use QuickBooks Pro, print out your statements every month, freehold them, and put them in a binder. That way, if there are any issues, you can refer back. And again, like I said, your accountant might want you to make a copy of them. And if you say, oh, I want your statement from September, or something's looking funky in QuickBooks Pro, you wouldn't be able to do that. So if you had a binder, you just make a copy of it. And that's the presentation. Any additional questions? Okay, I'm going to hand out my survey here, and please fill it out, and you can just put it at the end of the table when you're done.